Hey, welcome back guys, it's Josh here. So today I thought I would have a chat with you guys about something that seems to get asked quite a lot on forums and Facebook groups, and that is which is better, a track saw or a table saw. So if you want to hear what my opinion is, then stick around and we shall find out. Okay, so before we start, I would ask that if you enjoyed the video today, if you could give us a thumbs up, because that massively helps the channel out with the old YouTube algorithm and everything. If you really enjoyed it, maybe hit the old subscribe button, because that would be awesome. And then if you really enjoyed it and you enjoy the sort of content that I put up, if you hit the old notification bell, and what YouTube will do is it will send you a quick notification to let you know that I've posted a video, usually on a Thursday or on a Friday afternoon, depending on how work's been in the week. But yeah, get that notification bell tapped and they will let you know as soon as we pop the video up. Thank you very much. I hate to ask, but likes, subscribes, comments, they are everything on social media. So without them, the channel doesn't go anywhere. And yeah, awesome. Let's get back to it, shall we? Okay, so then, track saw versus table saw. Which one do you think is better? I would imagine the majority of you that have come here to watch this maybe have an idea, maybe have an inkling on which one that they think is better. I have an opinion because I know which one works better for us. We've been using both of these for about 5 or 6 years now. This one's maybe 7 years old, this is maybe 5 or 6 years old. So we've got a lot of experience with both of these tools, and we know what works well for us, might not necessarily work well for anybody else. I think first off, what you need to do is you need to be honest with yourself, and you need to sit there and say, what am I going to be using the tool for? It's always a case of having the right tool for the right job. Sometimes you can budget, cut corners, not necessarily always true, but I definitely think with this, it is definitely the right tool for the right job. So first off, be honest with yourself on what projects you're looking to make. If you haven't got anything planned in, plan some projects in, and then try and work your tool base to how your projects are going to how you can complete projects, right? So the second thing I think you need to bear in mind is your budget. Budget is a killer when it comes to these tools. You can pick up a track saw from between like 70, 80 pounds for like a cheapo, like Aldi little one, all the way up through to like a Mayfell, which is like between 700 pounds. Table saws, they start off like 150 pounds for a ropey one, and they go all the way up to thousands. I think in terms of like budget wise, for around about 500 pounds, there's the DeWalt 7485, maybe, I think that's what the one is. A lot of guys seem to really enjoy that. That's like a smaller sight saw. Apparently the fence isn't too bad on it for that type of saw, and it's got enough power for what most people need to do. I think above that is the Axminster Craft range, which is maybe 600 quid. If you can stretch to it, I think that's a great saw. We had one of those before we had this, and we abused it no end. It still runs at my friend's house who we sold it to. And then above that is like the Axminster Trade Saw, which is this one. This is £900, I think, with the 10-inch blade on it. And we have abused the crap out of this, right? I mean, absolutely abused it. Used it way over and above its recommended duty cycle, and yeah, and it's still going today, thankfully. Touch wood and all that. But I've done a video on this saw, so if you want to check that out, by all means go check that out. I'll check the link in the description. So yeah, so we obviously run the Axminster Trade Saw, and then the plunge saw or track saw that we use is the Shapak. This is the TS55, I think PL55. Yeah, it's a great little saw. It's only 1200 watts, so it's not mega powerful, but for the things that we've thrown at it, it's been perfect. And for argument's sake today, we're going to be talking about track saw versus a cabinet type saw, because I don't have a job site saw in the workshop, so I think it'd be a little bit unfair of me to try and compare those two. So what we'll do is we'll do this type, whether you want to buy one of these or get something like this. I think the safety with these things is pretty good. If I'm honest with you, I don't think they're as safe as what a lot of people make them out to be. That's my personal opinion. Obviously, whilst the saw is up, so when you haven't got pressure on it, the blade is behind the guard, perfect. It does have a riving knife on it. If you can see that, the riving knife here, which is great for when you cut in standard, or like normal timber. When there's tensions inside the boards, you don't want that to catch the blade. So that's really, really good. portability aspect of it, they don't weigh like, I don't know, maybe weighs like 4 or 5 kilos. So a lot easier to transport than say like a 200 kilo table saw. But oh, and they're a lot better for intricate cutting. So there's a job we did where we had to make a whole bunch of MDF letters. This was perfect because especially when you're doing like the inside of like an R, like a capital R or an A, you know, you just pop the plunge saw in, job's good, and you wouldn't be able to do that with a table saw. And the last thing to remember is they're great for, it's a great space saving tool, right? So again, with the portability of it, this is it, right? That's it in your 2 rails. You can chuck them in your van, you can slide it down the side. It's never really going to be an issue. It's not like you're trying to transport a like a 4 foot by 3 foot table saw. Okay, this is the track saw then. What are they not good at? The first thing they're not good at is ripping something like dimensional lumber. Okay, you're never going to be able to. Well, I suppose you can stick another one back next to it, but it's not something that I would really want to do, is to try and rip a 2x4 down. You're certainly never going to be able to rip it down the length, maybe like a 2x3 like you would do with a table saw. But yeah, you're always going to struggle trying to rip thin, as in not particularly wide boards. The other thing that might become an issue is when you're using it to rip down thin material, so like 3mm. Let me get you something I'll show you now. Okay, so here's a 5 foot long by 4 inch wide piece of 3mm birch. Obviously, got a huge amount of bend in it, right, until it snaps. But yeah, so not particularly good for dealing with thin stock. You can get a little bowing in there. You can obviously have to support that along the full run that you want to cut it. So that's not particularly a good thing. Okay, so in terms of safety, I probably go against the grain with a lot of people on this. I don't think they're super amazingly safe. I think that they build a lot of complacency in people because the blade's inside the guard and because you have to be pushing it down. It does concern me a little bit. I let a friend of mine borrow this. Don't ever let your friends borrow your tools. And as he was using it, if you can see that, look, he has come along here to cut. It's caught something in the timber and it's ridden up, and so the saw's gone up like this and across. Yeah, scared him. It definitely scared him when it happened. I remember him talking to me about it. But and that's not something I'd really heard of people happening with track saws, but it is something to bear in mind. You know, as with any power tool, you need to be paying attention to what you're doing all the time that you're using them. You are the softest thing in the shop, right? So, and something like this, easily chop your fingers or your arm off, and that's not something that you want to happen. I think another con for the track saw is time, right? So when you're doing more intricate stuff, yes, it's a lot better. If you're ripping down sheet material, so say for example, you're wanting to build a cabinet out of a sheet of plywood, then I would say the table saw is definitely a lot quicker. You're going to have to mark out each individual cut, whereas with a table saw, you just move the fence, measure it up, set it, done. Well, you're going to have to go measure both ends, set your track up, make sure that if as the rubber wears, you've set any additional offset on there for anything else that you need. So yeah, I would have to say that maybe they're not the quickest tool, but they are quite accurate. So what is a table saw good for? I personally think the list is endless, but I mean, that's just me, right? For one, they are amazing at repeatable cuts. So say for example, you need to, I don't know, cut down 2,000 little rectangles like this, right? Like I've got stacked over there. Easy. What you do is you just set your fence to whatever width you want to do it, smash that board through there, get all your strips done, take them, stack them all up, put them on a sled, just like this. Stack them all up, set yourself up a stop block, slide them up against the stop block, and then all you need to do is just run them through. And you take these ones out, slide it over, put it through, jobs are good, right? So instead of having to cut every single one or risk chopping them out on a mitre saw and tearing everything out, I've got a nice zero clearance insert on my table saw sled. Again, zero clearance insert on my table saw, so very minimal tear out on the materials as we cut them. And yeah, just the ability to be able to stack. So what have we got here? We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, so 15 pieces at a time, right? Those 2,000 that I had to cut down, 15 at a time compared to like 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. Super easy, right? And because you've got your stop block and you've got your fence, you can make sure everything is lined up absolutely perfectly. So I have over there 2,000 units that are 6x4, and they are all 6x4. In fact, they are all 149.8 millimeters by 100 millimeters, dead on. Every single one of them. And the beauty thing is I can stack 100 up, put them all together, all the same size. Never going to happen with the track saw, right? Never going to happen. So that brings me on to jigs and sleds, right? One of the things I love about a table saw is I love anything that's multi-use, right? And it does multi-use well. A table saw is that for sure. So I have I've got a table saw sled here. I've got a crosscut sled down here. So this attaches to my fence, and what this does is means I can put on here and I can get angles more than 45 degrees by sliding along my fence like this and setting the table saw blade down. So we have that. I have my sled here for doing 45 degrees. So this is what I use for when I'm doing picture frames, that sort of thing. So that's that. I have another, oh, covered in dust down here. I have another miter sled, so to cut 45s this way, so that either one of those makes really good, gives me a really good finish on my miters. I particularly enjoy doing that one. Beauty with that one is as we made it, I can't remember who, maybe it was William N.G. I watched, maybe it was Stumpy Nubs, I can't remember. The beauty of that one is as you cut it, you end up with like 3 or 4 different types of angle, so you can make 3 or 4 different size sleds. Perfect. What else have we got down here? I think that's all of them. They're all gone. I've not got them in to show you, but Google table saw sleds and table saw jigs and see how many there are out there. There are stacks. So, I mean, for me, that is a big win with these. So you can make yourself sleds for doing finger joints. If the arbor's long enough, you can use put a dado stack on there. Now, dado stacks aren't really that common in the UK. I think Axminster are maybe the only like cabinet type saw that has an arbor long enough to run a dado stack. But I think they are going to get more common. They're not illegal, for those of you who think that they are. I know a lot of people say that they think they're illegal. They're not in the UK, they're not illegal in Europe either. You get them on panel saws and stuff, but there's set European or EU guidelines for things like you need to have a specific type of guard, they have to be braked and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of companies, I guess, just don't bother with them because it's easier. So like I said, really with the repeatable cuts, the speed of setup, right? So with the track saw, you have to mark out one end, mark out the next end, set your track down, line it all up, get it all perfect, then cut. With a table saw, you just go, get the tape measure or the straight edge, check it, put it down, done. Nice and simple. So I think for cutting thin materials, table saw is king again. We do a huge amount of birch plywood cutting, if you've noticed, especially 3mm, 4mm, 5mm, all works so much easier on a table saw compared to running it through a track saw. Plywood especially has a tendency to warp, which can be difficult to run through on the table saw, but if you have the right technique, a lot easier than using a track saw, in my opinion. Another one is a table saw is great for ripping dimensional lumber. Now I've heard a lot of people say about a bandsaw, unless you have a good quality bandsaw, and I'm talking like a bandsaw that probably costs more than this table saw, you might struggle to rip a decent piece of dimensional lumber. If you want to trim an 8 foot, if you've got an 8 foot 4x2 and you want to cut it in half, so if you've got an 8 foot 4x2 like this and you want to cut it straight down the centre, you can do that on a bandsaw, but what's going to happen is if you haven't got it set up correctly, if you've got maybe like a thin blade, you probably want something at least like a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch blade, it's going to drift. So it's going to drift, so it's going to do this or it's going to do that, and you're going to end up with a crummy cut. Not going to happen on a table saw. You do need to be, if I was doing something like that, I would make sure that I've got a riving knife. I can see that there. Makes things a lot safer, but yeah, perfect really. It's worth noting that both are very good for jointing. I've jointed with both. Obviously with the track saw, you don't really need, there's no real setup on it. As long as the track saw is, as the blade's at 90 degrees to the base, then you're good to go with a good quality blade behind that. And when I have done jointing with the table saw, you can run it through, it's a bit ropey sometimes, so I have a table saw sled, but now that I've got the lumberjack, I don't really need to worry about that, but it is possible, that's for sure. Okay then, so what are the cons of a table saw? Well, personally, Portability is quite an issue. This one weighs like 200 kilos. I think it's like maybe 4 foot wide, 3 foot deep. So what's that? 1220 mil by 900 mil. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be lifting this in and out of a van, that's for sure. So if you've got the space for it, perfect. If you haven't, it's going to be an issue. It's not this type of table saw, like specifically, not the type that you could maybe carry out of a shed, use outside and then bring back in. This type of table saw, you've got, it's once you put it in its place, it's there. Dust extraction is a bit of a con. You need to have a proper system set up really for it, or a good quality dust extractor. But then the same can be said for a track saw. When you look at a track saw, we use the Festool MIDI, which is not cheap, and I think from memory the Festool MIDI cost more than the Charnwood dust extractor did that we run the table saw on. So make that what you will. So one thing that you might struggle with when you're working with a table saw is not having a square corner. So as much as you would like to think that an MDF sheet comes with square corners, they don't necessarily always do. Same with plywood. And having a track saw means that you can square that initial corner up and work off of that. Not something you can do off of a table saw. I mean, with a panel saw maybe, but not this. Biggest issue with the table saw is safety. Right now, like I said with the track saw, you have to be super safe with them, man. You have to treat them with respect. You are the softest thing in the shop, and this thing will eat through your hand, your fingers, your face if you get it near it. So you really do have to treat them with respect. I know a lot of people pick up injuries with them. You need to be careful if you're using one. If you're not too sure about using one, maybe have a chat, see if you can speak to somebody who uses them a lot, maybe go around there and work with them a little bit, or check out YouTube because there's lots of videos on YouTube. Okay then, so that's my pros and cons for a track saw and a table saw. I'd be genuinely interested in listening to what you've got to say. I guess, like I said at the beginning of the video, in reality what it really comes down to are the projects that you're going to be using it for, the budget that you have for the tool, and yeah, I mean space is a big one, right? And portability, that's huge. So space and portability, if you're going to be taking it to a job site, then you either need to be looking at a job site saw or you've got to have a track saw. If you're going to be static working, so you've got a workshop or a large shed, I guess, to work out of, table saw's king. For me personally, it just is. But yeah, I'd be genuinely interested to hear what you've got to say. The other thing to remember, I guess, is are you going to be doing lots of intricate work, lots of different angles, or are you going to be using it for making things like picture frames or cabinets, shelving, that sort of stuff? Again, for those sorts of things, table saw is going to be king. If you're going to be if you're trying to run a business where you're cutting out loads of like 3 foot high letters, track saw is where you need to be, isn't it? Personally, we started out using a track saw. We started off with the Shapak. That was the first big saw that we bought, and then I had an old iron hole, yeah, table saw that was like this big, that was just like press sheet steel and stuff like that. I ripped the motor off of that, picked up some 18mm MDF, and I built a table saw. Maybe I'll stick a picture up of that I built. Probably not the safest thing, but it definitely worked for us. But yeah, so again, it kind of comes back to space and budget and the amount and what you're going to be using it for, right? We were ripping down loads of sheet goods. We weren't really doing any work with actual timber, so the Shapak worked great for ripping it down because we didn't have a huge amount of space. But then having the table saw that I built and putting the sled on there meant that we could rip those longer sheets down into loads of little squares and rectangles, which is what we needed to be able to do. It's easy to get sucked up into other people's recommendations, but you've got to remember that it's about what you need the tool for, not what other people use the tool for. I see a lot of times where people sit there and they say, oh, you don't need table saw, you've got track saw. A track saw and a mite saw and a band saw is everything you need. I mean, maybe, but you need to have a decent band saw because, like I said, you're going to deal with drift, blade drift and that. Cheapo track saws, probably not the best. You know, you want to go mid-range if you can, but the cheap ones do work for you. And yeah, mite saws, I'm not a huge fan of mite saws unless I'm cutting down big pieces of timber for tables, that sort of thing, and maybe doing a bit of framing work. But other than that, I think that's kind of where the mite saw ends. I'm sure I'll upset some people with that, but yeah, they're not for me really. So then, what do you think to that? I have no doubt I've kind of upset a few of you. I always have disagreements with people because I don't know if you figured it out right, but for me, table saw is the king of the tools in here, man. We use it so much, all day, every day, man. That tool gets used, and that Axminster is a beast. Definitely go check out that video, and you can see how it's built inside. Like I said, the link's in the description. I would genuinely love to hear your thoughts and your feedback, whether it's good or bad. You know, don't be an idiot in the comments, but if you disagree with me, by all means, write it down and tell me why you disagree with me. I'm a big boy, I can take it. I might not agree with you, but I definitely would love to hear your side of, your opinion on it. As always, if you could hit the like and subscribe button. I mean, if you've stayed this long all the way to the end of the video, then maybe you'll like some of the other stuff that we do. So hit that like, hit the subscribe, and if you really enjoyed it, tap that notification bell and you will get a notification next time I pop a video up. Thank you very much. You have an awesome day and you'll stay safe.